Oh yeah, I like this jacket. Hey everybody. What? Since I'm gonna be doing a Halloween review, I decided to do it with some style, huh? And besides, leather jackets are cool. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the multi-voice entertainment. I'm the multi-voice reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion, and today is another episode of Multi-Voice Arena. So, I decided to start off with a certain franchise I'm going to be talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really sad that when Universal was trying to bring their classic Universal monsters back into fame, and they tried to create the Dark Universe, and sadly it bombed pretty bad, no thanks to Tom Cruise's Mummy movie. Well, they should have just sticked with the Brandon Fraser movie. I mean, make a fourth movie and let it be a tie-in to all the other classic monsters. I mean, hell, when they did Van Helsing, I thought they should do a crossover between the Mummy and Van Helsing. But that aside, there was another studio who did seem to love a certain classic monster movies. Believe it or not, back in 1998, Goosebumps start changing the world. And I remember when the Goosebump books first came out, and they were like the big sensation. I mean, before Harry Potter, we had Goosebumps. Beware, you're in for a scare. And of course, I already covered the Goosebumps. And I know some of you are going to be asking me, am I going to review a Goosebump second movie since I reviewed the first one? Yeah, all in good time. I'm just got a lot on my plate, and I just can't go through every single one. But a certain company I know they were trying. I mean, back when Goosebumps came out, there was a company called Full Moon Pictures. Full Moon Pictures decided to make a kid-friendly horror version of the classic monsters, trying to get them back into popularity. And they started this whole entire thing called Filmonsters. And what they're planning to do, I mean, they even did a Filmonsters intro, even though it's a clip from Puppet Master 2, where the two lawn puppets started trying to dig up a grave, and you start seeing the headstone of Dracula, the Mummy, the Werewolf, the Frankenstein, Gillman, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Invisible Man, and the Phantom of the Opera. It's like Full Moon was planning to make a series of kid-friendly classic monster horror movies. But sadly, they only made two. And I'm going to start off with the first movie that Full Moon had made, which it is The Werewolf Reborn. Man, the werewolf. Alright, this here the Wolfman Jack. I'm gonna rock and roll the light. I mean, this is rock and roll heaven, baby, cause rock and roll never die. Mussy, mussy, mussy. Every time when I think about the Wolfman, I always love that classic, legendary radio DJ called Wolfman Jack, baby. Yeah. But, despite a Wolfman Jack, let's start with the movie of The Werewolf Reborn, shall we? Now, believe it or not, only 4 known actors, only 4 appeared in this movie. And at first it starts out, there is this guy running out in the woods, and then all of a sudden he gets attacked by a werewolf. And then the next day, a girl shows up who goes by the name of Elena Crane, played by Ashley Tesoro. You know, some of you probably remember her from Saved by the Bell. And I've seen her what she looks like right now, and she still looks great. But anyway, her story turns out that her parents wanted to get out of their country and let her move all the way to where her uncle lives in Romania. Now, there's one thing I gotta say about Full Moon. Full Moon, they always filmed their movies in Romania, believe it or not. Most of the movies they made always been shot in Romania. I guess it must be really cheap to them. Thanks to the master of Full Moon, Charles Band. And I'll talk more about him later. But anyway, the girl, she showed up to meet her uncle, who goes by the name of Peter Krennic, played by Robin Atkin Dawes. Some of you probably remember him on Babylon 5, but a lot of people remember him from his voice acting that he did. I mean, he did a lot of voice acting, from video games to animation, you name it. We're having a windy day lately, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, he told his niece to stay in his room no matter what happens. Just stay in the room so you can be safe. Because Peter thinks it's dangerous for her to live in the house with him, because he knows that he is cursed by the werewolf curse. And then one night, she starts hearing screaming and yelling from him, and then from out of nowhere, she ran towards him and discovered that he turned into a werewolf and ran out in the woods. Attack another person who was going after him? I guess every time when you're a werewolf, you always get hungry. Like yours truly. Getting some more of these pumpkin seeds. Seriously, you should get yourself some of these organic pumpkin seeds. They're really good. But anyway, when the full moon was gone, he finally arrived home, and she saw him change back to his normal self. Now, one thing I started noticing that I had to say was really cheesy. He had a scar right here to where the werewolf either clawed him or bit him, and he had a pentagram in his chest, which looks a lot like a wad of gum lines to make that pentagram symbol. But from out of nowhere, out comes Inspector Crawl, played by Lynn Lesser. You know Lynn Lesser from the Seinfeld series. Uncle Leo, why on earth are you doing in a werewolf movie? Well, Jerry, I gotta do something. Now, what is the deal with classic monsters from cheesy B-rated movies? I mean, if they want to be successful, you should let the Universal do the part. I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it. I always like Kramer. Anyway, Inspector Crawl, he got the confession from Peter, and he doesn't believe that he's a werewolf. He thinks that he's mentally ill, thinking that he... And when the girl kept telling him that he saw him turn into a wolf, he thinks that she's lying in order to protect her uncle. Or saying that she watched way too many horror movies and young kids in their imagination. Does it ever piss you off that every time grown-ups always saying that you kids in your imagination? I mean, if I tell somebody and they say, you have a wild imagination, I would punch them in the face! Dumbass! Don't insult me like that! But anyway, she decided to go out in the woods, and there was a group of gypsies there, and there was that young boy that she met in the beginning, and he wanted her to come with him to meet his grandmother, the old lady, played by Lucia Mailer. And Lucia Mailer, she starts telling him that her uncle was cursed by the werewolf. And the only way to stop the werewolf curse, she needs to use the gun that is full of silver bullets and fire him to the chest in order to end the curse. Now, she loves her uncle very much, and the last thing she wants to do is kill her uncle because of the werewolf curse. But there is no other way. When somebody is cursed by a werewolf, there's only one option. Silver bullet to the chest. At least this old lady doesn't do that old, whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives, become a werewolf himself. Or that famous poem that was made up by the Universal. A man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night. When the full moon rises and the wolfbane bloom become a wolf at night. Although one thing that kind of bothers me. Why they call it werewolf. I guess they didn't have the rights to use the term wolfman, so they just call it werewolf. But anyway, she took the gun with her, and she went to the inspector, and she started telling him that he is cursed. And of course, the inspector says, the only way I deal with him is I shoot him. And that's it. And he said, you gotta make sure your bullets are made of silver, because that's the only thing that can kill him. And of course, his uncle turned into a werewolf, made his escape out of prison, while she went back into the house. And when Peter, her uncle, showed up, she can tell that deep down inside, she wanted him to shoot him. So she fired 5 bullets right in his chest. And now he is finally free from the werewolf curse. And after that horrible drama, the inspector did apologize. And of course, what to say to her parents, he'll cover that. Because he knew that Peter was a great man. Despite his stubborn attitude and not believing in her. So now, the train showed up and she went back home. The end of the Werewolf Rebirth. Now, if you ask me, I have to say the Werewolf Reborn, I always get confused by calling it Rebirth, but it's called Reborn. But anyway, I say that movie was pretty good. It wasn't too scary. One thing you should know about me, I have a soft spot for Full Moon. They make some pretty good kid-friendly movies and even shows. And they make some pretty damn good science fiction and action and good horror until 2000s, which I'm going to explain on my next review, since my next review is going to be another Full Moon. Except this one, I'm going to be talking about Frankenstein Reborn. And that's coming up next on my next review. So you better stay tuned. Now, one thing that does bother me. I've seen the sequel to The Howling. But, why haven't anybody ever make a werewolf movie and make the werewolf be a woman? I'm not kidding. Somebody should make the wolf woman. Or she-wolf. Or something like that. I'm going to dive in a little bit of history of the werewolf, I'm going to tell you folks. Did you know that there was a silent film, and that was the very first werewolf movie ever made? It was made back in 1913, but sadly it was destroyed because of the fire back in the 40s or 50s. So none of the silent film that they made in the past was never recovered. Which I gotta say, that's a crying shame. But one movie called The Werewolf, made back in 1913, it was an interesting premise. It takes place in the Old West, where the Confederate are still killing all the Native Americans for their land. And one Native American woman preyed upon the spirits to save her people from against the Confederate, against the not the Confederates, but the cavalry. So the spirits gave her the ability to turn into a werewolf. So every time when the full moon rises, this Native American girl turns into a werewolf and start going after the cavalry. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think that would be a good premise, and why hasn't anybody ever made a movie version out of that premise? I mean, that would have been a box office success right there. Come on, Universal, I'm giving you a good one here! Oh yeah, and I also saw that remake of The Wolfman. It was good, but it could have been better. But that's just my opinion. So, I mean, instead of just grasping straws and making the werewolf be a guy, why not a werewolf be a woman? Take the premise that I thought up, or hell, take any premise involving a woman who becomes a werewolf, and her being cursed, and a guy who loves her very much, debating if he wants to kill her or not to free her from the curse. I mean, it would be a good premise right there. Anyway, this is my review of the Werewolf Reborn. And if any of you like this review of what I'm talking about, the werewolf and such, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe for more, and stay tuned for my review of Full Moon's Frankenstein Reborn. So, thank you for watching, and happy Halloween.